You can't just show up here with no paperwork and expect us to roll out the red carpet. This is a school, not a shelter. The woman behind the front desk slammed her pen down so hard it bounced, rattling next to a laminated sign that read "Welcome. We're glad you're here." As ironic as it was insulting. "I'm not asking for a red carpet," I said, biting down on the tremble in my voice. "I'm asking you to do your job. Before we start, please make sure to like this video and hit this subscribe button so you never miss a story like this. And also comments where you are watching from. Thanks." She rolled her eyes so hard I thought they'd stick. "And I'm asking for basic information. Like a last name. A birth certificate. Legal guardianship. Or did those get left behind wherever you dragged that poor child from?" A snicker echoed from behind me. Another parent in line. A man in a golf shirt holding his Starbucks and his daughter's registration packet like they were tickets to a country club. He smirked when I turned, like watching me get publicly humiliated was better than his latte. "She probably doesn't have a last name," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Probably just made the kid last week and now wants us taxpayers to raise him." I stepped forward so fast the receptionist leaned back. I didn't touch her. I didn't need to. "He has a name," I said, through clenched teeth. "And he has me. That should be enough." "Well," she said, folding her arms, "it isn't." I could feel the heat crawling up my neck. Not just from the room. From the years it took to get here. The miles. The nights sleeping in cars. The missed meals. The job applications. The babysitters that ghosted. The houses that didn't feel like homes. All of it, building to this moment. This desk. This woman. Telling me I wasn't enough. And my son was standing right there, holding my hand, watching his mother being treated like dirt. I bent down, leveled my face with his, and whispered, "Wait outside, baby. This is grown-up stuff." He nodded. His little eyes wide, his knuckles white around the straps of his worn-out backpack. And when the door clicked shut behind him, I turned back to the desk. "I may not have what you want. But I do have what matters." She scoffed. "And what's that supposed to mean?" I reached into my coat pocket. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but fury. From the injustice of it all. From every time someone decided they could measure my worth by paperwork and polish. I pulled out a worn envelope. No name. Just sealed, crinkled at the edges from too much handling. I set it down slowly. The woman didn't move. "What is this? A letter from Santa?" "No," I said. "From someone more powerful than that. From someone who trusted me with the one thing that mattered to her most." She stared, then hesitated. Like she suddenly sensed there was more going on than she understood. That maybe, just maybe, she'd picked the wrong person to mess with. "Open it." She didn't. She called for the principal. And that's when things really exploded. The door flung open like someone had kicked it. A tall, polished man with silver hair and a navy blue tie stormed in like he owned the building, which, from the way everyone stepped aside, maybe he did. "What's going on here?" he barked, already annoyed. "Why are parents shouting in the registration office?" "She's being difficult," the receptionist snapped, pointing at me like I was some stray dog that wandered in off the street. "She refuses to provide documentation. Says she has a letter instead." "From?" "I don't know." "God?" "Not God," I said, stepping forward. Her name was Elena Mercado. The principal's face changed. Not a little. A lot. Like the name had slapped him. Like it ripped open something old and deep. "Wait. Elena Mercado?" he repeated, quieter now. "Yes," I said. "And she wrote this letter before she died. For you." Now he looked at the envelope. Then slowly picked it up. His hands were steady, but his breath caught. He didn't open it right away. He just stared at the writing like it had come from beyond the grave. She made me promise, I said, that when the time came, I'd bring her son here. To this exact school. And that if anyone gave me trouble, I was to hand you this. His eyes didn't leave the envelope. But everyone else's were locked on me now. No more laughter. No more jokes. Just silence so thick it pressed on your chest. He finally opened the letter. And as he read it, line by line, his whole posture shifted. His shoulders slumped. His eyes glistened. He held the paper like it was something holy. When he looked up, he was no longer a man defending a system. He was someone who had just remembered who he used to be. Elena saved my life, he said softly. Back when I was nobody. When I was a scared, angry teenager on the edge of throwing everything away. She took me in. She gave me books. Food. She got me through high school. Told me I was worth something even when I didn't believe it. That woman, she built me. No one spoke. Then when she got sick, I said, she couldn't take care of her son. And I was the only one left. So I did. I raised him. I loved him like he was mine. Even when I had nothing. Because she asked me to. Because he deserves the kind of future she dreamed of. The principal folded the letter with both hands. Then looked at the receptionist like she was a roach on his shoe. This child is to be enrolled immediately, he said, voice firm. Full scholarship. Any supplies needed, we cover. And I want him assigned to the best first-grade teacher we've got. But. No but. He leaned closer. You just humiliated the woman who kept her promise to a dying friend. You should be the one apologizing. The receptionist's face flushed red. The man in the golf shirt was suddenly gone. And my son peeked in from the door, eyes searching. I held my arms open. He ran to me like it was the safest place on
Earth. And for the first time in years, it was.
People always think rock bottom looks like sleeping on the street or begging for food. They're wrong. Rock bottom is standing in a perfectly clean school hallway, holding your son's hand, knowing he's done nothing wrong, and watching doors close anyway. After that fight at the front desk, Principal Harris walked us straight to his office. Not through the main hallway like everyone else, but through a side door, quiet, away from the stares and whispers. Like he was trying to protect us. Or maybe hide what the school had just done. His office was warm. Not fancy, but the kind of place where someone kept pictures of their family, student drawings taped to the cabinets, a mug that said teachers make all other professions possible. He offered me water. I didn't take it. I was too busy watching my son, Mateo, sit on the edge of a leather chair like he wasn't sure if he belonged. Like the same fear I'd felt at the front desk had crawled into his chest too. Harris read the letter again, quietly this time. Then he looked up. You changed your name? He asked. I nodded. A long time ago. Legally. But I never changed his. And there's no father listed? No, I said. There never was. That part always made people uncomfortable. As if a man's absence was somehow my shame to carry. As if raising a child alone meant I'd failed before I started. Some of the other parents will talk, he warned, softly. They already are, I replied. He leaned back in his chair. You understand, without a last name, without formal guardianship, technically, Mateo doesn't qualify for enrollment. But I'm not throwing away the only child of the woman who saved my life because some spreadsheet says he's missing a few fields. My throat tightened. Thank you, I said. 2 words. But they felt heavier than a novel. Don't thank me, he replied. Make me proud. That's what Elena would have wanted. We got through the first day. Barely. They placed Mateo in MS. Jennings' class. She was young, sharp, and smiled too much, like someone who hadn't been tested by the world yet. She tried to make me feel welcome, but her eyes kept flicking down to the enrollment folder like she was looking for something that wasn't there. The other kids stared at him. Whispered. Laughed. Mateo didn't talk much. He never did when he felt watched. And the parents? They were worse. At pickup, one mom leaned over to another like they were at a PTA gossip club instead of the schoolyard. "Did you hear?" she said, loud enough for me to catch. "That new boy doesn't even have a last name. Isn't that weird?" "Probably some foster situation," the other said. "Or worse. I wouldn't let my kids sit too close." I stepped in. "You don't have to worry," I said. Calm. Controlled. "Whatever you're scared of, he's not it." They blinked. Said nothing. That's the thing about cowards. They never expect to be called out. At home that night, Mateo was quiet. He pushed food around his plate, but barely ate. "Did something happen?" I asked. He shook his head. "You sure?" He nodded. But then he whispered, "Why don't I have a last name?" I froze. He was only 6. And I knew this question would come. I just didn't think it'd come today. I got down on my knees in front of him, looked him straight in the eyes. "Because you're still choosing who you want to be," I said. "A last name is just something people are given. But who you are, that's something you become." He stared at me for a long time. Then asked, "But what if I want one?" "You will have one," I promised. "One day. When you decide it's time." He nodded. But I could tell, some part of him didn't understand. Not yet. And I wondered if, in trying to protect him from a painful past, I'd left him defenseless in the present. The next morning, it got worse. When we arrived at school, someone had written something on his cubby with red marker. Name, none. Big. Bold. Underlined. Ms. Jennings gasped. Another student pointed. Mateo stared like he'd just been punched in the chest. His fingers hovered over it, unsure if he should wipe it off, or just walk away. "I'll take care of this," Ms. Jennings said, clearly rattled. "This is not acceptable." But I could see it already, the damage. The words had been small. But the wound they left was wide. Mateo didn't say goodbye that morning. He just walked to his desk and sat. Head down. Shoulders sunk. He looked like he was trying to disappear. And that was the moment something snapped in me. I stormed back into the front office. The same receptionist from yesterday looked up, startled. "I want to speak to whoever's in charge of security," I said. She rolled her eyes. "Why? Someone steal your paperwork again?" "No," I snapped. "Someone wrote a slur on my son's cubby. And if you think I'm going to wait around while kids bully him and adults whisper behind his back, you picked the wrong mother to mess with." This time, she didn't laugh. She called the vice principal. And when he came in, trying to soothe me with the usual lines, "We'll look into it, kids will be kids, it might have been a mistake," I pulled out my phone and showed him the photo I'd taken of the marker on Mateo's cubby. "Do you know what this tells a child?" I said. "That because his last name isn't written on a piece of paper, he doesn't exist." He looked at the photo. Then looked at me. "I'll find out who did it," he said. "Good," I replied. "Because if you don't, I will." But that wasn't enough. That night, I opened the drawer where I'd kept Elena's things, her letters, her journals, the one box she'd left behind when she passed. Inside, under layers of fading paper and old photos, I found something I'd forgotten. A sealed envelope. Addressed to Mateo. Not for now. For when he was older. I turned it over in my hands. I didn't open it. But I knew what it meant. Elena hadn't just left me a child. She'd left me a purpose, and it was time to stop surviving, and start fighting. Because Mateo wouldn't go through life being treated like a blank space. He was her legacy. And now, he was mine. The next morning, I dressed Mateo in his favorite hoodie, the one with the little embroidered lion on the chest. I packed his lunch, braided his hair just like Elena used to, and kissed his forehead longer than usual. He didn't smile. But he didn't look away either. That was enough, for now. I had no intention of sending him in blind again. Not when the whole school seemed ready to decide who he was for him. So I stayed. I walked him in. Past the other parents, past the whispers, straight into Ms. Jennings' classroom. And that's when I saw her. Blonde bob. Perfect posture. Designer yoga gear at 8 a.m. She was standing beside her daughter's desk like she owned the room. And her daughter, Samantha, was smirking at Mateo from across the classroom. I already knew. It wasn't just a student's handwriting on that cubby. It was a parent's permission. I waited until the last kid had shuffled off to music class before I approached Ms. Jennings. "I need a word," I said. "In private." She hesitated. "Of course." She followed me into the hallway. I handed her the photo of the cubby, then pulled up the school's policy on harassment and discrimination. I'd read it 3 times the night before. Every word. I even highlighted the section about adult-facilitated bullying. "This," I said, tapping the screen, "violates your policy." "I'm aware. And I agree. But without proof of who?" "It was Samantha's mom," I said. "I saw her yesterday whispering to another parent. She's been stirring this since day one." Ms. Jennings looked uncomfortable. "Do you want to file a complaint?" "No," I said. "I want to talk to her." She blinked. "Here? Now?" "Now." The front office didn't even try to stop me. They called her down like I was some kind of school administrator. She came in looking confused, then smug. "Can I help you with something?" she asked, arms folded like she was above me. "You can apologize," I said flatly. "For what?" "For raising a bully. And for acting like your child's last name makes her better than mine." Her eyes widened. But she didn't back down. "I don't know what you're implying, but—" "I'm not implying," I snapped. "I'm stating. My son's cubby was vandalized. And whether your daughter held the marker or not, you put the idea in her head. That kids like mine don't belong. That names define worth. That if something doesn't fit neatly into your world, it's okay to tear it down." She crossed her arms tighter. "Look. I'm sorry your situation is complicated. But maybe if you'd done things the right way, this wouldn't be happening." My hand shook. But not from fear. From rage. I stepped closer. "My situation isn't complicated. It's courageous," I said. "I raised that boy with everything I had. He is smart. Kind. Brave. He doesn't need your name, your approval, or your permission to exist." She opened her mouth to reply, but I didn't let her. "You think because his paperwork is missing a few lines, he's incomplete?" I said. "Let me tell you something. That boy already carries a name. Not on a form. But in his heart. In the values he lives by. In the sacrifices made by the woman who brought him into this world and the one who held him through every storm after." There was silence. Then Ms. Jennings stepped forward. "Actually," she said, "he does have a name." We both looked at her. She held up a piece of paper. It was a class art project. Each child had drawn a named shield. A handmade family crest. And there it was. Mateo had drawn his own. In block letters at the top, he'd written, "Mateo Elena." The room spun. "He told me yesterday," Ms. Jennings whispered. "He chose it himself. Said it was after someone strong." The mother beside me scoffed. "You let a child pick his name?" Ms. Jennings looked at her. "No," she said. "He earned it." That afternoon, I picked Mateo up early. We sat in the car, quiet. I handed him the envelope Elena left behind. The one with his name on it, now his full name. He held it like it was treasure. You ready to open it? I asked. He nodded. He peeled the flap back slowly. Inside was a letter. Written in Elena's looping cursive. I didn't read it over his shoulder. I let him have that moment. But when he finished, he turned to me. And he smiled for the first time in days. She said I'm a lion, he whispered. And lions don't need to explain themselves. I hugged him. Tight. Tighter than ever before. You hear that? I said into his hair. That's your roar. Don't let anyone take it from you. The next day, the cubby had been cleaned. And over it, taped to the wood, was a brand new label. Matteo Elena. Big. Bold. Underlined. And this time, the whole class clapped. Not because a form had been filled out. But because a boy had finally been seen. I didn't expect to be called into a school board meeting. Not as a guest. Not as a problem. The email came 2 days after Matteo's cubby was fixed. The subject line was polite, parent engagement opportunity, but the tone read like a summons. No explanation. No agenda. Just a date, time, and room number. I stared at it for a long time. My thumb hovered over delete. But I didn't press it. Something in me knew this wasn't over. The system never likes it when you rewrite your own rules. The boardroom smelled like old carpet and power. 4 people in suits sat on one side of the table. Ms. Jennings was already there, looking nervous but supportive. And on the far end, of course, sat Samantha's mother. Same crossed arms. Same tight smile. She'd filed a complaint. About me. They said it was about disruptive behavior. But what they really meant was that I'd refused to stay in my lane. We've received reports of an emotional outburst, one board member began, reading from a clipboard like she was reading a parking ticket. Several staff have noted your aggressive tone during school pickup and classroom interactions. While we understand that tensions can run high, especially for single parents, we must maintain a respectful environment. I sat very still. Then I leaned in. Tell me something, I said. Did you also get reports of my son's name being mocked? His cubby vandalized? Him coming home crying 3 days in a row? A pause. We were made aware of certain tensions, another offered carefully. No, I said. You were made aware when I raised my voice. Not when my son lost his. Ms. Jennings cleared her throat gently. With respect, I believe this situation is being mischaracterized. Matteo is an exceptional student. His mother has only ever advocated for him. The classroom incident was resolved, and Matteo has been thriving since. One of the men on the board raised a brow. And what about the surname issue? He asked. There's been talk. Concerns about school records. Proper documentation. There it was. Not about behavior. About paperwork. I opened my bag and pulled out the envelope. Not Elena's letter, another one. This one I had written. This one was for them. I handed it over. One by one, they took it. It wasn't just a letter, it was a full statement, notarized. Declaring Elena's wishes. A legal name assignment. Witnessed. Signed. Sealed. Elena was my partner for 5 years, I said. We raised Matteo together. She was the one who walked him to preschool every morning. Who made him carrot cake on his birthdays. She chose to give him my name, and now he's choosing to keep hers. The man who had questioned me looked confused. But, there's no record of legal adoption. There's no record of love either, I snapped. But I assure you, it's real. Samantha's mom scoffed from the corner. This is a school, not a soap opera, she muttered. If we let parents just invent names, what's next? Kids, drawing up their own report cards? I turned to face her, fully now. No one invented anything. That name, Elena, was earned. Through nights of holding a sick child. Through daycare drop-offs and bedtime stories and scraped knees. If she were alive, you'd be applauding her strength. But because I'm standing here alone, you think it's make-believe? She looked away. But the board didn't. And that silence, it shifted something. Finally, one of the women at the table spoke. Softly. Firmly. I think we've lost sight of what matters, she said. We're not here to debate guardianship in a courtroom. We're here to support a student. A young boy who, despite everything, has found strength in his name. In the people who love him. She looked at me. You've given him that. And that deserves recognition, not reprimand. I blinked. Hard. She turned to the others. I motioned that we update Mateo's school file to reflect the surname he identifies with, as permitted by California Ed Code 49076.6. With supporting documentation, of course. There was a pause. Then a nod. Then two more. The motion passed. Outside the meeting room, I exhaled for what felt like the first time in weeks. Ms. Jennings caught up with me, her hands clasped nervously. I'm sorry, she said. For not speaking up sooner. I thought if I just stayed neutral, it would all blow over. I shook my head. No. You listened when it mattered. That's more than most. She smiled. And then she handed me something. It was a piece of paper. A fresh class list for the parent directory. Right there, sandwiched between Lopez, Isabella and Nguyen, Kai, it read. Elena, Mateo. Not unknown. Not pending. Not blank. But a name he chose. And the one she left behind for him. That night, Mateo ran into my arms like he used to when he was little. He didn't ask how the meeting went. He didn't have to. He just whispered, I wore the lion hoodie again. I pulled him close. And whispered back. You are the lion, baby. You always were. The assignment was simple. Bring something that tells your story. Each child had 1 minute to stand in front of the class and explain an object from home. Some brought trophies. Others brought stuffed animals or baby pictures. Mateo brought a box. It was small, worn, wrapped in twine. And when he stepped in front of the room, his hands trembled, but his eyes didn't. I wasn't there when he gave the presentation. Parents weren't invited. But Ms. Jennings sent me the video that afternoon. In it, Mateo stood in front of 21 other kids, holding the box to his chest like it might float away. He didn't say a word for 10 whole seconds. Then he untied the string. Inside the box were 7 things. A pair of red reading glasses. A dried daisy pressed between 2 index cards. A crayon drawing of 3 stick figures. A button with the words, "Be kind anyway." A broken watch. A movie ticket. And a photograph of Elena, laughing, blurry, real. This was my mom, he said, quietly. Her name was Elena. No last name. No title. Just a whisper full of weight. She wasn't famous. She didn't win anything. But she used to say, people are made of stories. And you can't carry a whole person with you, so you carry the stories instead. He paused. Then he smiled. These are her stories. The class didn't move. Not even Samantha. No one laughed. No one whispered. No one blinked. Because for the first time, they saw Mateo not as a mystery, but as someone who mattered. The video hit the school's internal portal first. Then Ms. Jennings, without realizing, posted it to a private educator group online. Within 48 hours, it had 200,000 views. Teachers from Oregon to Ohio were sharing it. One wrote, "This is why we teach." He reminded me who we're doing this for. Another said, "I watched this twice. I'll never look at my students the same again. They didn't know his last name. But they knew his heart. And it spoke louder than any name ever could. The next week, I got a knock at the door. A man stood there, early 30s, worn denim jacket, unsure eyes. He held the video in one hand. And a worn-out envelope in the other. "Hi. I'm Jamie," he said. "I used to know Elena. From before." He paused, swallowed. His voice cracked. "She wrote me once. Said if anything ever happened, I might want to find Mateo." I froze. I hadn't heard Elena speak his name in years. He held out the envelope. "She said it wasn't my place back then. But maybe it is now." Inside the envelope was a letter. Not just a note, but instructions. Plans. Details. Elena had thought of everything: school contacts, Mateo's allergies, favorite lullaby. She'd prepared. And at the end, she'd written, "Jamie is not his father by blood. But he once saved me from myself. If I don't make it, tell him, Mateo deserves someone who understands what it means to fight for your name, even when you don't have one." I read it twice. Then I looked up at him, and for the first time in a long time, I saw a part of Elena's past not as a threat, but as a promise. Mateo met Jamie the next weekend. They walked through the park in silence. No pressure. No expectations. Just space. Jamie didn't try to be dad. Didn't bring gifts or fake smiles. He just listened. And Mateo, usually quiet, guarded, talked. For 2 whole hours. About space. About dinosaurs. About Elena's grilled cheese recipe. When they came back, Mateo looked at me and said, "I think he knew her before she was sick." I nodded. Sometimes, that's the part you want someone else to remember. The before. A week later, Jamie came to pick Mateo up for a science exhibit. Samantha's mom saw him waiting by the school gate. I watched her do a double take. She leaned in. "That his dad?" I smiled. "No. But he knew his mom." She frowned, confused. And for once, I didn't explain. Some things aren't meant to be reduced. They're meant to be respected. That night, Mateo added a new item to his memory box. It wasn't flashy. Just a movie stub from the science exhibit. But I knew what it meant. Another story. Another connection. Another piece of the name he was building, not from a birth certificate, but from a life. A life that deserved to be seen. The letter had made its rounds. The video had gone viral. But nothing prepared me for what happened 3 months later, when Mateo's school called and said, "He's being honored. State level. Civic Youth Awards." They saw his presentation. They want to recognize him. I nearly dropped the phone. They weren't just acknowledging his story. They were inviting it. The event was held in the city's grand old theater, polished floors, golden arches, velvet curtains. It felt too big for a kid who once got laughed at just for not having a last name. I bought him a new shirt. Jamie loaned him his old tie. Mateo didn't say much in the car. He just held his memory box in his lap like it was a trophy. Because in his mind, it was. And honestly, in mine too. The host took the stage, an older gentleman with a crisp suit and a booming voice. He introduced each child with flair. Ashley Langston, for environmental work. Jared Mendez, for community service. Then he paused. And finally, from Willow Creek Elementary, for storytelling through memory, a young man who reminded us what it means to carry love without limit. He glanced down at his card. Then hesitated. The mic crackled. Mateo. His voice trailed off. There was no last name. No label. Just silence. I sat straight in my seat. A few heads turned. The host looked up, unsure. Mateo stood still. Then, clear and steady, he spoke. It's just Mateo. No embarrassment. No apology. He stepped forward, holding the box in both hands. And for a moment, the whole room stood still. The host smiled. Well then, just Mateo, come on up here. And they clapped. Not politely. But fiercely. Like they'd all seen something holy. Mateo didn't give a speech. He didn't need to. He simply opened the box, slowly, carefully, and showed them what was inside. The glasses. The daisy. The broken watch. The drawing. And the photo of Elena. Then he turned to the crowd and said, "These are the stories that made me." Then he walked off the stage. No award could have outshined that moment. Afterward, people came up to us. Teachers. Parents. A reporter. Someone asked, "But what's his real name?" I looked down at Mateo, who smiled at me with those brave, brown eyes. And I said, "His real name is Mateo. The rest is just paperwork." The reporter blinked. And walked away quietly. A month later, the school district launched a new policy. Students could choose to list their names however they wanted. Legal last names still existed, but they didn't have to be called by them. They could choose to be known by what mattered. Mateo chose Mateo E. E, for Elena. E, for everything she left him with. Not a surname. A tribute. A shield. A legacy. Now, whenever someone asks him where he comes from, he says, "I come from stories." And stories don't always fit on birth certificates. And when kids laugh, he laughs too. Not because it's funny, but because he's stronger now. He knows who he is. And that's a power no one can erase. Moral lesson. Not every name comes from a piece of paper. Some are built in silence, in struggle, in memory. What makes a name real isn't how it's spelled, but how it's lived. Never underestimate the weight of a story carried with love. It might just change the world.